Idly ho, neighbor. It's the Gun Cranks. Yes, we're back, which is kind of shocking after last week's episode, but I am Guns Magazine editor Brent Weed, along with American Handgunner editor Tom McHale and Special Assignments editor Roy Huntington. Gentlemen, I'm serious. I can't believe they allowed us back on the air, so to speak, after last week's China balloon episode.
We got banned from TikTok, though.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, there's a shocker. And we're not, that's a whole nother topic, is handling guns on YouTube. And that's going to be a topic of a show. But moving past that, gentlemen, can you identify what that is?
No.
So
give me a hint.
It's a magazine.
Magazine.
I was waiting for Tom to say it was a clip. No, let's talk about magazines. And this topic came up recently. We were talking about, something in handgun world, and the whole idea of cheap magazines came up. And guys, what do you think? You always buy the very cheapest magazine at the gun show, right? The one that's got the Afghanistani printing on it. And,
yeah.
A Glock official magazine for $4. Yeah, that's what I always buy.
I don't buy magazines. Right? I use the free ones that come with those felt holsters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the ballistic nylon holsters. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Exactly. Well, we're going to talk about magazines and not to buy cheap magazines and to throw your magazines away, because the number one? Yeah, you got to throw them away.
No, I just wanted to make sure you emphasize that point.
They're an expendable item, and people don't look at magazines as expendable items. And people find this hard to believe, but with a semi-automatic firearm, what is the very first thing you need to look at when there's a malfunction? The very first thing, before you look at, the wrist pins or the state of the moon, what's the first thing you look at?
The shooter. No, okay. Other than the shooter. Yeah. Absolutely. The magazines.
Magazine.
Can I tell you?
Device.
I'm going to tell a story that I've said this before on one of these shows, but I'm going to say it again because I like to tell it. I was at Thunder Ranch a million years ago, and a guy had a Taurus then, right, 20 years ago, and it was constantly malfunctioning, and it was probably magazine related, and he was fussing with it, and I happened to be next to him, and I heard crunch, 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 crunch of the gravel, and Clint Smith walked up, and he said, what's the problem? The guy says, well, I think this magazine isn't any good. And Clint said, you want me to fix that for you? And the guy brightened up and he said, well, yeah. And so Clint took it, leaned back, and threw it over the target berm. And we kind of heard it go tink on the other side. And then I remember Clint looked at him and said, there, it's fixed, and then crunched away. But that is more than just a social statement. I think it's more than a Clintism, and that you're exactly right. They're consumable items.
Yep.
And
people don't look at them that because they are kind of expensive. I mean, a good quality magazine may be 40, 50, 60 bucks. But if they quit working, do the math. You've got an item that you jam full of stuff. It is right next to an explosion. Every time you fire, you drop it on the ground. Sometimes it lands base first. Sometimes it doesn't. And you may be on concrete or gravel. And you expect it to continue to work over a period of years?
Yes, they do.
And the most delicate part of the magazine takes the most abuse, the feed lips.
Exactly.
Take all the hits and all the pressure and all the commotion, right?
Exactly.
Well, and I know you can buy a feed lip reforming dyes and all that kind of stuff, but it's like, really? It's $35 or something. Yeah. And you know what? To me, it ranks with those people who buy a $1,200 custom 1911 and then they buy an $11 imported cheap Chinese holster at the gun show, and then they feel like they did good. I mean,
hey, Brent? Did you remember to do the disclaimer at the beginning? Oh, I'll do it.
Yes, I forgot. Go ahead.
This show has been sponsored by the American Magazine Association of America, who has paid generous donations to the hosts of this show to promote their product and strategies.
Yeah. Yep.
But
thank you.
That's like a shampoo bottle.
Now we're good. Now we can talk about disposable magazines.
Well, on a shampoo bottle, it says shampoo, rinse, repeat. And I asked some people, and they say you don't need to repeat it. They do that because they want to sell twice as much shampoo.
Exactly.
But
did you
magazines
ask a chemist?
Are different.
Yep. And my tip of the day, and I think you guys all do this too, is I take a Sharpie, a silver Sharpie or a paint marker, and I mark all of my magazines somewhere, typically the base plate. And the reason I do that is not because I'm OCD like Tom McHale. It's because if you constantly get a malfunction, you'll be able to go, oh, that's magazine number 5 that's always malfunctioning. Huh, could that be a clue? That's when you do that. Or I honestly, I don't get rid of magazines, but I have a box of range magazines. If it's an intermittent problem, no better way to train on the tap rack or whatever your immediate action drill is, but make sure you never carry that magazine in a critical situation. Do you guys agree, or do you guys just always throw them when they start hiccuping?
I would.
Roy, you're muted.
He muted himself.
Or you muted me, right? I sometimes I save the spring and the base pad, but because I use them for other things, maybe. But no, if a magazine's acting up, I don't even save it as a range mag. It's like throw away.
Yeah,
I was sitting
I
here
won't
thinking,
argue that.
I really need
sense.
to mark my magazines. I toss it when it stops working, but I really should mark them so I know which is taking the abuse and which is. But what I do, and I didn't set this up for this show. You look right up there on the wall behind me and see a bunch of magazines, because over time I've just bought magazines when they're on sale or there are deals or whatever, good ones, and just stock up. So those are the spares. When I throw one away, there we go.
Well, Brent was right. It solves 90% of the problems. If I get a broken semi-auto pistol, it's almost always magazine related, or it hasn't been cleaned in 15 years, one or the other. The other thing gets me is these people will buy these really expensive rifles like HK MP5 and various magazine fed expensive, maybe European rifles and stuff. And then they shop on the discount places to buy the absolute cheapest imported, like you said, Pakistani, only dented a little bit, and they're still pretty good magazines. It's like, what is that about?
Well, my favorite is the gun show, and I'm not saying every person selling a magazine at a gun show is bad, but I'm saying the place where I see the worst quality magazines, the cheapest, is typically the gun show. And you'll have a guy with, all these crates full of magazines that have no brand name. No, this fits a Glock 19. Well, it may fit into a Glock 19 and it may work, but for $4.99 or realistically $9.99, you really think that sucker's going to last? Maybe like a brand name Glock or a quality aftermarket manufacturer that you're not going to pay that much less for the magazine.
Well, it's a universal problem, because isn't that what happened in the early days of the Beretta adoption by the U.S. military? Yes. They did all the testing with, Beretta pistols and Beretta magazines and say, yep, this is working like a champ, good to go. And then the procurement guys, got in line and said, oh, we can save 58 cents per magazine if we use crap magazines, which they did. And then the guns didn't work. Right.
Yep. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Well, and the other one I see too a lot is the AR-15 mags. When I've seen this, when they get to the point they're not working and they throw them into a big barrel or the 4x4 boxes, and then the government will sell those. I don't know if it's this name of the program still, but DRMO. Basically, that's where all the surplus comes from. It's surplus for a reason. So yes, you can buy a $5 AR magazine, but then when you're trying to figure out, why is my gun not running? Again, that might be a clue. So,
there's a company in the industry and they manufacture magazines for everything you can think of. If you have a Schwartz loose blowback, 11 millimeter semi-auto, you can buy a magazine from them. And so it's kind of handy if you have an odd gun like that or something unusual. But it's been my experience that those sorts of things generally, they aren't reliable enough. Because if you're going to do a limited run, you're not going to invest in the real dies that you need and all that kind of stuff. So there's always compromise. And if you pick them up, you could just tell, the edges are all sharp, cut your finger on them and stuff like that. But I will never understand that about so many American shooters. It's the old, they'll buy $1,000 rifle and put $100 scope on it, and
Yeah.
just to say, well, the other one was like $149.
Yeah.
It's like,
Or
geez.
a real high quality firearm, especially like a precision rifle, and then they put some 1904 I'm trying to think of like Ottoman Empire era, boxer primed
Oh, that's
ammo.
true. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, but it was only 14 cents a round. Well,
Huh.
there's a reason for that, so spend the
I
freaking money.
I would point out that
Yeah.
aftermarket is not always bad, and
No.
Right.
Especially in the magazine era, if you don't want to buy the factory magazine, which direct from is probably going to be pretty expensive, there are good aftermarket options.
Yeah.
Like back, this was years ago they started doing it, but I was thrilled to see Brownells start making magagazines.
Mhm.
They started
The
made
AR
all kinds of
magazines.
magazines for AR-15s,
Yep.
and I think they're doing AR-10s, and good stuff.
Well, if you get a Wilson Combat or a factory, whatever, factory Kimber magazine, factory Springfield Armory, factory Beretta, factory, you can take that to the bank just about,
Mhm.
I can't remember the last time I had a bag stock magazine like that.
And,
but yeah,
and
like
that
you
was a
said,
point
go ahead.
that I was going to make when you talked about brand name. That to me is the key. With cheap magazines, they never have a brand on them, which is funny because you look at other knockoff products, it'll be like the Joe Bang holster or, some kind of weird, funny name. Bad magazines never, ever, ever have a provenance listed on them. I'm sure there's one out there, but for the most part, if somebody hands you a magazine, there's no maker stamped on it, or there's a big pile of them and it says magazines. If somebody's not proud enough to put their name on it, that might be a clue also.
Well, they are kind of a commodity market, and so there are people who are in there to just, how low can you price up tomatoes by the pound, right? And so whoever prices them the cheapest, then the guy who doesn't know buys the cheapest rotten tomatoes and thinks they get a deal. But yeah, magazines, it's like I heard a saying not too long ago, and it was something like, it's better to spend the money and cry once than have to cry again and again and again over your frustration of having something cheap that doesn't work. And it's as simple as that. Because you spend $80 on a factory SIG magazine or something for your rifle, and you go, ouch, ouch, but you'll use it for the next 20 years. So I don't know.
It is America's, but you said something that has really become a philosophy with me, seriously, over the past 5 to 10 years as I've gotten older, that truly buy once, cry once is absolutely true. I can think of lots of cheap things that I bought that I really regret. I would be hard pressed to come up with a single incident where I paid, going rate for top quality merchandise and I was disappointed. It just never happens that way. So as Roy always says, save your lunch money.
Save your lunch money. Well, my charming wife bought a very expensive tailored suit 25 years ago. I think she paid like $1,500 for it. A name brand designer kind of Nordstrom's. And of course, I kind of went, whew, and she wears it still. And it still looks good. It's still fashionable, and I think that that's always a good lesson. So do that. At the opposite end of the spectrum is, I remember buying military GI 30 carbine magazines for $1.50. And so there are and were good deals, right, on good quality magazines. But I did notice just the other day that I've got J&G sales or somebody were offering military 30 carbine magazines used, and they were like $60.
Wow.
So it's like, good Lord.
And again, I'm not saying if you want to buy cheap magazines, that's fine, but don't use them in competition, hunting, or self-defense. You will regret that. And I speak, do as I say, not as I do. I'm just saying, and I think we've all had those experiences in the past. I don't do it anymore, but
No. And
Yeah.
I think, I think that and you said you have some range magazines, and I understand because you could give them away or something if you need to. I tended to never do that because if you are at the range and you're doing that and your gun's malfunctioning now and again, it is distracting, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you're constantly having to look at what's going on. You don't know, is it my gun this time, or is it, is there some other issue? But if you keep good quality magazines and your gun's running right, and like Brent says, don't buy the 3-cent ammo, you'll find the overall experience of shooting is just much more enjoyable. Because
Exactly.
I always hated that, where you put that magazine in and you think, is that the good one or is that the bad one?
Exactly. Playing Russian roulette for real, not a good thing. Makes for dramatic movies, but it's not good in real life. Well, guys, I think we're all in agreement here. Pay money for a good quality magazine, and if it quits working, deep six it. So pretty simple, but we don't see it very much, unfortunately, on the range. And
That's
don't
true.
buy cheap nylon holsters for your high quality gun.
etc., etc.,
Yeah.
etc. So
Actually, I think we need to do that episode. We've mentioned it many, many times, but we need to cover the whole $5.99 holster industry because it's a huge industry. And again, there's nothing that marks you as a rube more than showing up to the range with your Kimber, your Springfields, your Nighthawk, God forbid, and you've got it in that nylon strap holster that, hey, you paid $17 for it, Anyway, so we'll do that one of these days, guys.
Well, you know what? Can we as we leave here, I'd like to say people also forget holsters are a disposable accessory.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
how many times you've seen the guy, well, I've had this holster for 25 years and it's a misshapen mess of green leather and missing snaps.
Yeah.
It's like, spend your $75 and buy another holster. That sounds like another episode, if you ask me.
Yep. And Roy, you were just at Mitch Rosen's doing some stuff, and we won't get into all that, but I was thinking I've got he sent me some nice holsters, and man, that would hurt to throw one away. But you're right. If you've used it so much that it's not doing the job like it used to, it's time for it to be retired.
And Mitch
they'll soften up over time.
Mitch would be the first one to say, because he has people send holsters back. Hey, can you fix my holster? And he would say, no, throw it away. Don't be a cheapskate. Buy another holster, and it's only your life. So let's definitely do an episode because that'd be a good one.
Okay. Well, we'll end it on that one. And as always, you can check out the Gun Cranks audio podcast at all the podcast directories if you want to listen instead of watch us. And I can't blame you. But also check out the Guns Magazine podcast on those same directories. Don't forget to go and see AmericanCop.com. And it's not just for cops. And of course, American Handgunner. I lost my train of thought. There's so many
other one.
So many brands we've got. Tom Who. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, tell us about American Handgunner and some of the stuff you got coming up.
It's a fine magazine.
It is.
Outstanding magazine. American Handgunner was the first magazine dedicated to handguns.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
been
Guns
around for quite
Magazine
some time.
Was the first newsstand firearms publication.
We got all kinds of firsts here, don't we?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. And that gave me a second to reboot my brain. So at least I know back where I'm at now. So anyway, check out gunsmagazine.com, AmericanHandgunner.com, and all those other great things we talked about. So we will wind it up there on behalf of American Handgunner editor Tom McHale and Roy Huntington, our special assignments editor. When he's not doing video or writing stories, he's an international man of mystery. That's why he has that title. So on behalf of those guys, we will see you next episode.